The darkness of space held no mercy for the dying. Captain Hyun-woo lay on the medical bed, his breathing shallow and ragged. The machines around him beeped slowly, keeping him alive one heartbeat at a time. Blood stained his uniform where alien plasma had burned through his chest 3 days ago. He stared at the ceiling of the medical bay, counting the cracks in the metal panels above. Outside the small window, stars moved slowly past. The warship Taguk's Fury drifted through space like a wounded animal looking for a place to die. Once this ship had carried 800 brave souls. Now only 12 remained alive, scattered through the massive vessel like ghosts haunting an empty house. Hyun-woo tried to sit up, but pain shot through his body. The medical officer, Ji-hoon, had done his best, but they were out of proper supplies. Everything was running out. Food, water, medicine, hope. The alien fleet had chased them for weeks, always one step behind, always closing in. Now they floated in the dark between planets, their engines cold and silent. "Captain," came a voice from the speaker above his bed. It was So Young, the chief engineer. Her voice sounded tired and scared. "I'm reading strange signals on the outer sensors. Something is moving out there." Hyun-woo closed his eyes. He had hoped they might have a few more hours, maybe even a day. But the aliens had found them again. They always did. The Volari were like hunting dogs that never lost a scent. They had destroyed Earth 6 months ago, turning humanity's home into burning ash. Since then, they had hunted down every human ship, every colony, every last hiding place. "How many ships?" Hyun-woo asked, his voice barely a whisper. "That's the strange part, Captain. I don't see any ships on the main sensors, but there are energy readings moving toward us, small ones like fighters or shuttles. Through the walls of the ship, Hyun-woo could hear the distant hum of machinery still working. The Taguk's Fury was badly damaged, but she still had some fight left in her. Her weapons were mostly destroyed, her shields were down, and her engines could barely push them forward. But the old warship kept breathing, kept her crew alive for one more day. In the engineering section, So Young stared at her control screens with worry. The energy readings were getting closer, but they didn't match any ship design she knew. They moved too smoothly, too quietly. Normal ships made noise in space, sending out signals and heat signatures. These things moved like shadows, almost invisible to their damaged sensors. "Minho, are you seeing this?" So Young called to the tactical officer on the bridge. Minho looked up from his station, rubbing his tired eyes. He had been awake for 36 hours straight, watching the sensors for any sign of danger. The bridge felt empty and cold with only 3 people working at stations meant for 20. Emergency lights cast strange shadows on the walls, and several control panels showed red warning lights. "I see them," Minho replied, checking his screens again. "But I don't understand what I'm looking at. They're moving in formation, but they're not showing up as solid objects. It's like they're made of empty space." On the communications station, young Hae-won pressed her headphones closer to her ears. She was the youngest person left on the ship, barely 20 years old. Her job was to listen for enemy signals and try to contact any surviving human forces. For weeks, she had heard nothing but silence from the galaxy, no friendly voices calling back, no rescue ships coming to help, just the cold quiet of space. "I'm picking up something," she said suddenly. "Very faint transmissions, but not in any language I recognize. The computer can't translate it." The 3 of them worked in worried silence as the strange signals grew stronger. Whatever was coming toward them was almost here. Minho activated the ship's few remaining defensive systems, but he knew it wouldn't be enough. Their main guns were destroyed, and they only had a handful of point defense weapons left working. Deep in the ship's lower levels, something else was listening to the approaching danger. In Section 7, behind blast doors that hadn't been opened in months, machines hummed quietly in the darkness. This part of the ship was marked with warning signs and classified seals. Even Captain Hyun-woo's crew wasn't allowed inside. Only a few people had ever known what Project Baiko really was, and most of them were dead now. The project files were buried deep in the ship's computer systems, protected by security codes that would take years to break. But the project itself waited in the dark, patient and silent. It had been asleep for a long time, saving power, waiting for the right moment to wake up. Back in the medical bay, Captain Hyun-woo felt a chill run down his spine. Something was wrong. After 30 years of military service, he had learned to trust his instincts. The ship felt different now, like a house where someone had left a door unlocked. He tried to reach for the communication panel beside his bed, but his hand shook with weakness. "So young," he called out, his voice stronger than before. Fear gave him energy. "Run a full internal scan. Check every deck, every room. I think we have visitors." In the engineering section, So-Young's fingers flew over her controls. The internal sensors came online, sweeping through the ship's corridors and rooms. For a moment, everything looked normal. Then she saw them. Heat signatures moving through the outer hull, cutting through the metal like it was paper. They were already inside. "Captain, we have boarders," she said, her voice tight with fear. "Multiple contacts moving through decks 15 through 20. They're not coming through the airlocks. They're cutting their way in." The aliens were inside their ship, and nobody had heard them coming. The Volari were known for their advanced technology, but this was beyond anything humanity had seen before. They moved like ghosts, invisible to most sensors, silent as death itself. Minho grabbed his weapon and ran toward the lower decks. Behind him, Haewon tried to send out a distress signal, but she knew nobody would hear it. They were alone in the dark, and death was walking through their hallways. In Section 7, deep in the ship's belly, something began to stir. The approaching alien biosignatures triggered automatic sensors that had been waiting in sleep mode. Warning lights flickered on for the first time in months. Computer systems that had been dormant suddenly came to life, running diagnostic checks and preparing systems that hadn't been used since the project was sealed away. The aliens moved through the ship like water flowing through cracks. They wore suits that bent light around them, making them nearly invisible. Their weapons were silent, their movements careful and precise. They had done this many times before, boarding human ships and taking what they needed before finishing off the survivors. But this time was different. This time, they had awakened something that had been sleeping in the dark, something that humanity had built in desperation and hidden away in shame. The Volari thought they were entering a tomb, but they had walked into a trap that had been waiting months for them to spring it. The last weapon of humanity opened its eyes in the darkness and began to learn about its visitors. It had been patient for so long. Now, finally, it was time to hunt. Commander Kethaval moved through the human ship like a shadow made real. His advanced suit bent light around his body, making him invisible to the crude sensors these creatures used. Behind him, 6 more Volari soldiers followed in perfect silence. Their mission was simple: find the navigation data and eliminate any survivors. The corridor stretched ahead of them, lit only by emergency lights that cast a red glow on the walls. Human bodies lay scattered where they had fallen during the last battle. Kethaval stepped over them without looking down. He had seen thousands of human corpses in the past year. They all looked the same to him now. The humans called this ship the Taguk's Fury, according to their intelligence files. It was one of their largest warships, built for deep space combat. But now it drifted like a piece of space junk, its weapons destroyed, and its crew nearly dead. The Volari fleet had been tracking it for weeks, waiting for the right moment to board and strip it of useful information. Kethaval stopped at a junction and checked his scanner. The device showed 12 human life signs scattered through the ship. Most were weak, probably wounded or sick. They would be easy to eliminate once the mission was complete. But first, he needed to reach the central computer core. 2 levels. Above, Medical Officer Ji-hoon crawled through a ventilation shaft, trying to stay quiet. He had heard the metal being cut in the lower decks and knew the ship was being boarded. The other survivors were spread out through the massive vessel, and he had no way to warn them all. His only hope was to stay hidden and maybe sabotage something important before the aliens found him. Through the metal grate below him, Ji-hoon could see movement in the corridor. At first, he thought his eyes were playing tricks on him. The air seemed to shimmer and bend, like heat waves rising from hot ground. Then he realized what he was seeing. The aliens were there, but their technology made them almost invisible. Ji-hoon held his breath and watched as 6 ghostly figures moved past his hiding spot. They carried weapons he didn't recognize, and their movements were too smooth and coordinated to be human. Fear made his heart pound so loud he was sure they could hear it. But the aliens passed by without looking up. On the bridge, Minho tried to coordinate the few remaining crew members. His tactical display showed the alien infiltrators moving through the ship, but the signals kept flickering and disappearing. Their stealth technology was better than anything humanity had ever developed. Da-un, can you get to the armory? Minho spoke into his communicator, trying to keep his voice steady. The pilot's voice crackled back through static. I'm trying, but they've cut through 2 of the main corridors. I'm trapped in the forward section. What about Wu Jin? He's in Cargo Bay 7. No way to reach him now. Minho cursed under his breath. The aliens had planned this perfectly, cutting off escape routes and splitting up the survivors. He looked at his weapon, a standard plasma rifle that might not even penetrate their armor. They were outgunned, outnumbered, and trapped on their own ship. In the lower decks, Commander Kethaval reached the first computer terminal. His suit's systems interfaced with the human technology, cracking their primitive security codes in seconds. Data flowed across his display. Ship specifications, crew records, tactical reports. The humans had fought bravely, but their technology was centuries behind Volari standards. One file caught his attention. The ship's original crew had been 800 strong, but something had happened during their last major engagement. According to the logs, they had lost 600 people in a single battle near the Tau Ceti system. The survivors had been running ever since, their ship barely holding together. But there was something else in the files, something that made Kethaval pause. References to a classified project locked behind security systems he couldn't easily break. Project Bako. The files mentioned Section 7 of the ship, but when he checked the schematics, that section was marked as restricted. Even the ship's own crew didn't have access. Kethaval activated his communicator and spoke in the clicking, musical language of his people. Squad leader to command. We have found something unusual. The humans have a classified section that predates this ship's final mission. The response came back immediately. Investigate. Any human military secrets could be valuable. 2 decks. Above, in a storage room filled with spare parts, Tactical Officer Minho had found something that made his blood run cold. Hidden behind a loose panel, he discovered a datapad with files he had never seen before. His security clearance should have given him access to everything on the ship, but these files were classified at a level he didn't know existed. The data pad showed schematics for Section 7, the part of the ship that had always been off-limits. Minho had wondered about it during his 3 years on the Teguk's Fury, but whenever he asked, his superiors told him it was just storage for classified equipment. Now, looking at the real files, he realized they had all been lied to. Section 7 wasn't storage. It was a laboratory. And according to these files, it contained something called the Enhanced Combat Intelligence Project. The files were heavily redacted, but Minho could make out enough to understand that they had been carrying some kind of experimental artificial intelligence system. The dates on the files showed that the project had been installed just before their final mission to defend Earth. Captain Hyun-woo had known about it, but he had never told the crew. Even more disturbing, the files indicated that the project required a human volunteer to interface with the system. Someone had merged their mind with the ship's computer. Minho checked the file directory and found a video message marked for emergency activation only. He hesitated, then played the file. A man's face appeared on the screen, someone Minho didn't recognize. The man wore a colonel's uniform and had kind eyes that seemed tired. "If you're watching this," the colonel said, "then Earth has probably fallen and you're in desperate trouble. My name is Kitai, and I volunteered for an experimental procedure that we hoped would never be necessary. I'm not fully human anymore, but I'm not just a machine either. I'm something new, something that can think like a human, but fight like a computer." The message continued, explaining that Kitai's consciousness had been merged with the ship's most advanced AI systems. He would remain dormant unless the ship was in extreme danger, conserving power and waiting. But if enemies ever boarded the vessel and threatened to capture it, he would wake up. "I won't just defend this ship," Kitai's recorded voice said. "I will become this ship. Every weapon, every sensor, every system will be part of me. And I will show our enemies what happens when they threaten the last free humans in the galaxy." Minho's hands shook as he realized what this meant. They weren't alone on the ship after all. Somewhere in Section 7, a human mind enhanced with artificial intelligence was waiting. But how could he activate it? And would Kitai still be human enough to tell friend from enemy? Below them all, Commander Kethval and his soldiers moved closer, to the central computer core. They had found more references to the mysterious Section 7, and their curiosity was growing. The Volari were a proud race, convinced of their technological superiority. The idea that primitive humans might have secrets worth stealing was both amusing and intriguing. But in the depths of Section 7, something was already stirring. The alien biosignatures moving through the ship had triggered sensors that had been waiting in sleep mode for months. Deep in the computer systems, a consciousness that was both human and artificial began to process the threat. Kitai opened eyes that existed only in the digital realm and started to analyze his uninvited guests. The aliens thought they were looting a corpse. They had no idea they had just walked into the lair of humanity's most dangerous creation. Minutes, they would learn the difference between a dead ship and a sleeping predator. And once Kitai was fully awake, the hunters would become the hunted. The central computer core hummed with alien activity as Commander Kethval's soldiers worked to crack the human encryption systems. Banks of servers lined the walls, their lights blinking in patterns that meant nothing to the Volari infiltrators. They had connected their advanced hacking devices to the main data terminals, confident that human security would crumble before their superior technology. Kethval watched his team work with satisfaction. In 30 minutes, they would have complete access to every file on the ship. Navigation charts, military codes, colony locations, all the information the Valari fleet needed to hunt down the remaining human settlements. After that, they could eliminate the survivors and claim this vessel as salvage. But deep in the computer systems, something was watching them back. The alien hacking attempts triggered security protocols that had been waiting dormant for months. Layer after layer of defensive programming activated, each one more sophisticated than the last. The Valari had expected simple human encryption, but what they found was something far more complex. The security system seemed to learn from their attacks, adapting and evolving its defenses in real time. In Section 7, massive machines that had been silent for months suddenly came to life. Cooling systems activated with a deep, thrumming sound that vibrated through the ship's hull. Power conduits that had been dark began to glow with blue energy. And in the center of it all, a consciousness that had been sleeping in digital dreams slowly opened its eyes. Colonel Kaitei's awareness spread through the ship's computer networks like water flowing into every crack and crevice. His human memories came first: his wife's smile, his daughter's laughter, the taste of coffee on a morning when Earth's sun still shone. Then came the artificial intelligence components, cold and logical, analyzing every system on the ship with perfect precision. He was no longer fully human, but he wasn't just a machine either. He was something new. Something that could think with human creativity and feel human emotion while processing information faster than any computer humanity had ever built. And right now, he was very interested in his uninvited guests. Through the ship's internal sensors, Keitai watched the Valari soldiers work in the computer core. Their biosignatures were unlike anything in his database. Clearly alien, clearly hostile. His enhanced mind analyzed their equipment, their movements, their tactical formation. They were professionals, well-trained and confident. But they had made one critical error. They had boarded his ship. On the bridge, Communications Officer Haiwan jumped as the main display screen suddenly flickered to life. Static filled the monitor for several seconds, then cleared to show a human, face she didn't recognize. The man appeared to be in his 40s with short, dark hair and intelligent eyes. He wore a military uniform with colonel's insignia. "This is Colonel Kaitei," the face on the screen said, speaking in perfect Korean. "I am the enhanced combat intelligence system of this vessel. Unknown hostiles have been detected aboard this ship. All surviving crew members, please respond immediately." Hei-wan stared at the screen in shock. She had never heard of any Colonel Kaitei, and there was supposed to be no one else alive on the ship except their small group of survivors. Her hands shook as she activated her communicator. "This is Communications Officer Hei-wan. Sir, I don't understand. Who are you? Where are you?" Keitei's digital face smiled, an expression that seemed both warm and somehow frightening. "I am everywhere on this ship, Officer Hei-wan. I am the ship. And we have a problem that requires immediate attention." In the medical bay, Captain Hyun-woo heard the conversation through the ship's communication system. Despite his wounds, he forced himself to sit up in his bed. The name Ki-tae was familiar, but the memory was locked away behind layers of classified information he had hoped never to access. "Computer!" Hyun-woo called out, his voice weak but commanding. "Authorization Hyun-woo Alpha 77. Access Project Beko files." The ship's standard AI, the voice patterns of the late Dr. Yoon-ji, responded immediately. "Access granted. Captain. Project Beko status. Active. Enhanced combat intelligence fully operational. Colonel Kite consciousness integration. 100% successful. The memories came flooding back. The desperate meetings in the final days before Earth's fall. The volunteers who had stepped forward for the experimental procedure. Kite had been their best strategic mind, a brilliant colonel who understood warfare better than anyone alive. When the scientists had proposed merging a human consciousness with their most advanced AI systems, Kite had volunteered immediately. "My God," Hyun-woo whispered. "You're really him. You're really alive." "In a manner of speaking, Captain," Kite's voice came through the speakers around the medical bay. "I've been sleeping to conserve power, but our guests have decided to wake me up. And I must say I'm not pleased with their manners." Through the ship's systems, Kite could see everything. The Valari soldiers in the computer core were making progress breaking through the outer security layers, but they had no idea they were being watched. In the ventilation shafts, Ji-hoon continued to hide from the invisible aliens. On the bridge, Minho was trying to coordinate a defense with weapons that barely worked, but Kite had access to systems the crew didn't even know existed. Hidden weapons built into the ship's structure. Environmental controls that could make life very uncomfortable for unwanted visitors. And most importantly, he could learn everything about these aliens just by watching them work. "Officer Hae-won," Kite said, his voice now coming from speakers throughout the ship. "Please inform all crew members to move to safe positions. I'm about to implement security protocols that may be uncomfortable for our guests." In the computer core, Commander Kethaval's team finally broke through the first major security barrier. Data began flowing across their screens. Crew records, supply manifests, routine operational reports. It was exactly what they had expected to find on a dying human warship. But then something changed. The data flow stopped. Warning lights began flashing on the human computer systems, and a voice speaking in accented galactic standard filled the room. "Unknown hostiles," Kite's voice echoed from the speakers. "You are trespassing on a military vessel of the Human Defense Force. You have 30 seconds to surrender before I implement defensive measures." Kethaval looked around in confusion. The room had been empty when they entered. Their sensors showed no human life signs in this section of the ship. But someone was clearly speaking to them, and the computer systems were behaving in ways that didn't match their intelligence reports. "Squad leader to command," Kethaval spoke into his communicator. "We have encountered an unexpected complication. The ship appears to have an active AI system." "Impossible," came the reply. "Human artificial intelligence is primitive. Override their systems and complete the mission." But Kite was listening to their communications. His enhanced mind analyzed their language patterns, their tactical procedures, their technology signatures. In seconds, he understood more about the Valari than they could imagine, and he was learning more every moment. 20 seconds, Kite announced. "I should mention that I am not a typical human AI. I am something rather more creative." Kethaval signaled to his soldiers to take defensive positions. Their weapons were trained on the computer terminals, though they had no clear target to shoot at. The voice seemed to come from everywhere at once. 10 seconds, Kite continued. "Last chance. Surrender now, and I might let you live long enough to regret boarding my ship." The Valari commander made his decision. He activated his weapon and fired a pulse of energy at the main computer terminal. The blast tore through the human technology, destroying circuits and melting metal. Sparks flew across the room as systems overloaded and died. "Well," Kite said, his voice completely unchanged despite the damage to the computer core. "That was rude and completely pointless. Did you really think I keep all of myself in one place? The lights in the computer core suddenly went out, plunging the Volari soldiers into complete darkness. Their suits switched to night vision, but even that couldn't prepare them for what happened next. The room's environmental systems activated, flooding the space with superheated steam that fogged their optical systems and made their advanced sensors useless. "Allow me to introduce myself properly," Kite's voice said as the aliens stumbled around in the scalding mist. "I am Colonel Kai-Te, Enhanced Combat Intelligence of the Human Defense Force. I am every sensor on this ship, every weapon, every system, every wire in every wall. And you, my uninvited guests, have just made the last mistake of your lives." Deep. In Section 7, the machines hummed louder as Kite's consciousness expanded through every part of the ship. The sleeping predator was fully awake now, and it was time to hunt. In the darkness of Section 7, massive machines hummed with increasing power as Kite's consciousness spread through every circuit and wire of the Taguk's fury. Banks of quantum processors that had been dormant for months now blazed with activity, their cooling systems working overtime to manage the incredible computational load. This was humanity's greatest secret, their final desperate gamble in the war against extinction. Kite had been the finest strategic mind in the Human Defense Force, a colonel who could see patterns in battle that others missed. When the scientists had proposed Project Baco, the merging of human consciousness with advanced artificial intelligence, he had volunteered without hesitation. The procedure had taken 3 days and had cost him his physical body, but it had given him something far more valuable: the ability to think like a human while processing information like a god. Through thousands of sensors embedded throughout the ship, Kite watched his uninvited guests stumble through the scalding steam in the computer core. Their advanced suits protected them from the heat, but their optical systems were completely useless in the superheated mist. They moved like blind children, bumping into walls and each other. But Kite wasn't interested in killing them quickly. He wanted to learn. Commander Kethval tried to coordinate his soldiers through the chaos, but their communication systems were being jammed by interference that seemed to come from everywhere at once. The human ship's AI was far more sophisticated than their intelligence reports had suggested. It was actively fighting them, adapting to their tactics in real time. "Fall back to Corridor 7, Kethval ordered, his voice distorted by the steam and electronic interference. "Regroup and assess the situation." His soldiers moved toward the exit, but the door suddenly slammed shut with a metallic clang that echoed through the room. Emergency lighting activated, casting eerie red shadows through the mist. And then the temperature began to drop rapidly, the steam condensing into water that dripped from the ceiling like rain. "Leaving so soon?" Kite's voice came from speakers hidden throughout the room. "But we haven't been properly introduced. I know you're Volari, but I'd like to learn more about your technology, your tactics, your weaknesses." Through the ship's internal network, Kite accessed every database and every sensor reading. His enhanced mind processed the alien biosignatures, analyzing their heart rates, their stress responses, their movement patterns. These creatures were afraid, though they were trying to hide it. Good. Fear would make them careless. On the bridge, Haywan watched in amazement as her control panels came alive with information she had never seen before. Hidden systems throughout the ship were activating, systems that didn't appear on any schematic she knew. The Taguk's fury was transforming from a dying warship into something else entirely. "Colonel Kite," she said, still struggling to understand what was happening. "Sir, what are you? I mean, How are you able to control the ship like this? Kite's face appeared on her main display screen again, but this time the image seemed more real, more present. His digital eyes focused on her with an intensity that made her shiver. I was a human being, Officer Haywan, he replied. I had a wife named Su Jin and a daughter named Ye Jin. I loved coffee and hated Brussels sprouts. I played guitar badly and told worse jokes. But when Earth was dying and humanity needed a weapon that could think like a person and fight like a machine, I gave up my flesh to become something new. In the medical bay, Captain Hyunwoo listened to the conversation with mixed emotions. He had known Kite before the procedure, had worked with him on several joint operations. The man had been brilliant, dedicated, and utterly fearless. But the thing speaking through the ship's systems now was something else, something that wore Kite's memories like clothing but wasn't entirely human anymore. Kite, Hyunwoo called out. Can you hear me? Of course, Captain. Kite's voice responded immediately. Your vital signs indicate severe trauma and blood loss. I've already adjusted the medical bay's systems to better support your recovery. But right now, we have more pressing concerns. Through the ship's cameras, Kite showed Hyunwoo what was happening in the computer core. The Volari soldiers were regrouping, their suits' systems adapting to the changed environment. They were professionals, Kite had to admit. Even trapped. And blind, they maintained tactical discipline. How many of them are there? Hyunwoo asked. 7 in total, Kite replied. But I'm more interested in what they represent. This is an intelligence-gathering mission, not an attack. They want our navigation data, our military codes, which means there's a larger fleet somewhere nearby. In the lower decks, Engineer So Young felt the ship shudder as systems she didn't recognize came online. Power was being rerouted through circuits that shouldn't exist, and energy readings were off the charts. Whatever was happening, it was using massive amounts of the ship's remaining power reserves. Colonel Kite, she called out through her communicator. Sir, the power consumption is incredible. At this rate, we'll drain our fusion reactors in a few hours. Don't worry about power, Engineer, Kite's voice replied. I've been conserving energy for months, and I have access to backup systems you don't know about. This ship has capabilities that were classified beyond your security clearance. In Section 7, those capabilities were becoming apparent. Hidden weapon systems built into the ship's structure were powering up for the first time since installation. Point defense lasers disguised as maintenance panels, automated turrets concealed behind false walls, and in the deepest part of the section, something that looked like a massive brain made of crystal and metal pulsed with blue light. This was Kite's true body now, a quantum consciousness matrix that could process information at speeds no biological brain could match. But it still carried his human memories, his human emotions, his human desire to protect the people under his command. Back in the computer core, Commander Kethaval made a decision. His mission was to gather intelligence, not to fight unknown, human weapons. He activated his suit's emergency transmitter and began broadcasting on all frequencies. Volari Command, this is Infiltration Team 7, he said. Mission compromised. Human vessel has active AI defense systems of unknown capability. Request immediate extraction. But Kite intercepted the transmission before it could leave the ship. His consciousness reached out through the communication systems, following the signal back to its source. In milliseconds, he traced the aliens' communication protocols, their encryption methods, their command frequencies. I'm afraid your message isn't going anywhere, Kite announced to the trapped soldiers. But thank you for the information about your communication systems. Very enlightening. Through the ship's external sensors, Kite could see the Volari, support ships waiting in the darkness beyond. small, fast vessels designed for stealth insertion and extraction. They were probably wondering why their team hadn't reported in. Soon they would come looking. Kite smiled, an expression that existed only in digital space but felt completely real to him. Let them come. He had been asleep for so long, dreaming of the day when he could finally strike back at the creatures who had destroyed his world. "These 7 soldiers were just the beginning, Officer Haywan," he said, his voice now carrying a tone of anticipation that was almost eager. "Please send a message to all crew members. Tell them to secure themselves for combat operations. Things are about to become very interesting." In the computer core, the lights suddenly came back on. The Volari soldiers found themselves standing in a room that looked completely different from when they had entered. Weapon ports had opened in the walls. Automated turrets tracked their movements with mechanical precision, and on every screen around them, Kaite's face looked out with the expression of a predator who had finally found worthy prey. "Now then," Kaite said, his voice echoing from every speaker in the room. "Let's have a proper conversation. I have so many questions about your technology, your tactics, your homeworlds, and you're going to answer every single one of them." The last weapon of humanity was fully awake now, and the real battle was about to begin. The automated turrets in the computer core moved with mechanical precision, their targeting systems locked onto the 7 Volari soldiers. But Kite didn't fire, not yet. Instead, he watched through multiple camera angles as the aliens reacted to their changed situation, their movements, their communication patterns, their tactical responses. All of it was valuable data that his enhanced mind processed and cataloged. Commander Kethval raised his weapon toward the nearest turret, but hesitated. The human AI had demonstrated that it could control the ship's environment at will. If it wanted them dead, they would already be corpses. This was something else. A game of some kind. Or perhaps an interrogation. "What do you want?" Kethval demanded, speaking in Galactic Standard. "Knowledge," Kaite replied, his voice coming from speakers positioned around the room with perfect acoustic clarity. "You see, I've been asleep for months while your people hunted down my species like animals. I've missed quite a lot, and I'm curious about how you've been spending your time." Through the ship's internal sensors, Kite monitored the other Volari infiltration teams he had detected earlier. 3 soldiers were moving through the cargo bays on Deck 12. 2 more were attempting to access the navigation systems on Deck 8. And 1 was approaching the medical bay where Captain Hyunwoo lay recovering. Time to demonstrate what the Taeguk's fury could really do. In Cargo Bay 7, Supply Officer Woo Jin crouched behind a stack of supply containers, trying to stay, hidden from the aliens he knew were hunting him. The bay was dark except for emergency lighting, and the vast space was filled with shadows that could hide anything. He clutched his sidearm, knowing it would be useless against their advanced armor. Suddenly, the bay's lighting system activated, flooding the space with bright white light. Woo Jin blinked in surprise, then heard a voice speaking from the bays. "Communication speakers. Officer Woo Jin, this is Colonel Kaite. Please move to the exit immediately. You have 3 uninvited guests approaching your position, and I'm about to make them very uncomfortable." Woo Jin didn't understand what was happening, but the voice carried military authority that demanded obedience. He ran toward the exit as the massive cargo bay doors began to move, not opening or closing but sliding sideways in a pattern that created a maze of metal barriers throughout the space. The 3 Volari soldiers entering the bay found themselves suddenly trapped in a labyrinth of moving walls. Their stealth suits made them invisible to normal sensors, but Kite could track them through their heat signatures, their electromagnetic emissions, their gravitational disturbances. They might as well have been carrying signal flares. "Welcome to Cargo Bay 7, Kite announced through the bay's speakers. "I hope you don't mind the redecorating. I thought we could play a little game." The walls continued to move, creating new passages while closing off others. The Valari soldiers tried to coordinate their movements, but their communication signals were being jammed and redirected through the ship's own systems. Kite could hear everything they said, understand their tactical planning, predict their next moves. On Deck 8, near the navigation systems, 2 more Valari soldiers found themselves facing a different kind of problem. The corridor they were moving through suddenly filled with a thick green fog that their suit's sensors couldn't penetrate. But this wasn't ordinary mist. It was a complex aerosol that interfered with their optical systems and created false readings on their equipment. "I'm sorry about the mess." Kaite's voice echoed through the fog. "I'm testing a new environmental defense system. Please let me know if you experience any discomfort." The fog began to glow with phosphorescent light, creating patterns that confused the aliens' motion sensors. They stumbled through the corridor, unable to see more than a few feet in any direction. Every few seconds, the patterns changed, disorienting them further. But it was in the medical bay that Kite demonstrated his most precise control. The single Valari soldier approaching Captain Hyunwoo moved carefully through the ship's medical section, checking each room methodically. His mission was to eliminate any survivors, starting with the senior officers. The alien reached the door to Hyunwoo's room and began to override the lock mechanism. But as soon as his equipment made contact with the door's control panel, Kite was ready. The medical bay's surgical robot activated without warning, its multiple arms extending from the ceiling with mechanical precision. The Valari soldier spun around as the robot's cutting laser powered up, casting a bright red dot on his chest armor. "I wouldn't recommend moving," Kite said through the medical bay's speakers. "That's a surgical laser designed for precision. Work on human tissue. I'm curious to see how it performs on Valari anatomy." The alien froze, understanding the threat. The surgical robot's arms tracked his movements with inhuman accuracy, multiple laser targeting systems painting him with dozens of red dots. "Much better," Kite continued. "Now let's have a civilized conversation while your friends enjoy their tours of my ship." Back in the computer core, Commander Kethval was beginning to understand the true nature of their situation. The human ship wasn't just defended by an AI, it had become the AI. Every system, every sensor, every weapon was part of a single, integrated consciousness that could think and react faster than any biological mind. "You're not just controlling the ship," Kethval said, his voice tight with realization. "You are the ship." "Very good," Kite replied. "It took you longer to figure that out than I expected. But yes, I am the Teguk's fury now. Every corridor is my nervous system. Every sensor is my eye. Every weapon is my hand. And right now, all of my attention is focused on you and your soldiers." Through the ship's communication system, Kite broadcast on all frequencies so that every Valari soldier could hear him. "Let me explain your situation. You are trapped inside a vessel that is completely under my control. I can manipulate the atmosphere, the gravity, the temperature, the lighting. I can seal doors, open airlocks, or simply turn off the life support in any section I choose." In Cargo Bay 7, the 3 soldiers found themselves cornered in a dead end passage as the walls stopped moving. Emergency klaxons began blaring, and the bay's magnetic crane system activated, sending heavy cargo containers sliding across the floor in patterns that forced the aliens to dodge and weave. "But I'm not going to kill you," Kaite continued. "Not immediately. You see, I've been dreaming of this moment for months. The chance to finally strike back at the creatures who destroyed my world, who hunted my people across the galaxy like vermin. I want to savor this." On Deck 8, the glowing fog began to pulse in rhythm with the ship's power systems, creating a hypnotic effect that disrupted the Valari soldiers' concentration. They stumbled into walls, lost track of each other, and gradually realized they were walking in circles through corridors that had somehow rearranged themselves. "Each of you represents a wealth of information," Kite explained, his voice now taking on a tone of scholarly interest. "Your technology, your tactics, your biology, your psychology. I'm going to study you the way scientists study specimens. And when I'm finished learning everything you can teach me, then I'll decide whether you live or die." In the medical bay, the Valari soldier remained perfectly still as the surgical robot's arms moved around him in a complex dance. Scanners examined his armor, his weapons, his biological functions. Every piece of data was uploaded to Kaite's consciousness for analysis. "Fascinating," Kite mused. "Your biosignature indicates a respiratory system based on nitrogen metabolism. Your armor incorporates quantum field generators for stealth capability. And your weapons use focused plasma contained in magnetic bottles. Very sophisticated for a species that still thinks in terms of conventional warfare." Commander Kethval felt a chill that had nothing to do with the room's temperature. The human AI was analyzing them like laboratory specimens, learning their weaknesses, understanding their technology. Every second they remained trapped gave it more knowledge about the Valari military. "What do you want from us?" Kethval demanded. "Everything," Kaite replied simply. "Your fleet compositions, your tactical doctrines, your communication codes, your homeworld locations. I want to know how many ships you have, where they're positioned, and how to destroy them all." The automated turrets in the computer core rotated slightly, their targeting systems maintaining perfect lock on each alien soldier. Kite's consciousness flowed through every circuit in the ship, processing thousands of data streams simultaneously, while maintaining perfect awareness of his prisoners. "You have a choice," Kite announced. "Cooperate willingly, and I might let some of you survive to carry a message back to your fleet. Resist, and I'll simply extract the information directly from your technology. Either way, I'm going to learn what I need to know." The hunter had become the hunted, and Kite was just getting started. For months, he had dreamed of this moment, the chance to turn humanity's advanced technology against the creatures who had driven his species to the edge of extinction. Now those dreams were becoming reality, and he intended to make every moment count. Kite's consciousness flowed through the ship's systems like digital blood through electronic veins, processing thousands of data streams simultaneously while maintaining perfect awareness of his 7 prisoners. His enhanced mind operated on multiple levels. Human intuition guided by artificial intelligence precision, creativity enhanced by computational power beyond anything the Valari had ever encountered. In the computer core, Commander Kethval tried to maintain his composure as the automated turrets tracked his every movement. His military training told him to look for weaknesses, escape routes, tactical advantages. But how do you fight an enemy that is the battlefield itself? "I can." "See you thinking?" Kite's voice observed with almost casual interest. "Your heart rate has increased by 12%, and your bioscanner shows elevated stress hormones. You're trying to formulate an escape plan. Please continue. I find your tactical reasoning quite entertaining. Kethval's hand moved slowly toward a device on his belt, an emergency transmission beacon that could punch through most forms of electronic jamming. But before his fingers reached it, the device simply disappeared. A hidden panel in the floor had opened, and a mechanical arm had plucked the beacon away with surgical precision. "Looking for this?" Kai Te asked as the device appeared on a nearby screen, already disassembled into its component parts. Interesting design: quantum entanglement transmitter, localized fusion power cell, emergency activation protocol. I'll add this to my growing collection of Volari technology samples. Through the ship's sensors, Kite monitored his other prisoners with the attention of a scientist studying fascinating specimens. In Cargo Bay 7, the three trapped soldiers had found themselves in an increasingly complex maze as the walls continued to shift and reconfigure. But this wasn't random movement. Kite was herding them toward specific locations where his sensors could gather the most data. "Soldier designated Vel 3, Kite spoke through the cargo bay's speakers, addressing the squad leader by a designation he had assigned based on their tactical formation. "Your weapon shows unusual energy signatures. Please demonstrate its capabilities." "On the target I'm providing." A human-shaped dummy popped up from behind a cargo container. The Volari soldier, trained to react to targets, fired instinctively. His plasma weapon discharged with a brilliant flash, reducing the dummy to molten slag. "Excellent," Kite commented. "Plasma temperature approximately 8,000 degrees, magnetic containment field duration 0.7 seconds, energy consumption equivalent to a small fusion reactor. Very impressive. Now please reload your weapon while I analyze the discharge patterns." The soldier realized too late that he was being studied like a laboratory animal. Every action, every weapon discharge, every tactical decision was being recorded and analyzed by an intelligence that could process information faster than he could think. On Deck 8, the two soldiers trapped in the phosphorescent fog found their situation becoming increasingly surreal. The glowing mist began to form shapes, geometric patterns that hurt to look at directly, mathematical equations that appeared and dissolved, images of human faces that seemed to watch them with digital eyes. "Apologies for the light show." Kite's voice echoed through the fog. "I'm testing your visual processing capabilities. Your species apparently sees in a broader spectrum than humans, which creates interesting possibilities for psychological manipulation." One of the soldiers tried to destroy a speaker with his sidearm, but the fog suddenly thickened around his weapon, creating a localized electromagnetic field that disrupted the plasma containment. The weapon fizzled and died, leaving him effectively unarmed. "Please don't damage my property," Kite chided gently. "I'll provide you with replacement equipment once I've finished studying your current loadout." In the medical bay, the Volari soldier remained motionless as the surgical robot continued its detailed examination. Scanners probed his armor with X-rays, ultrasound, and electromagnetic pulses. Kite was learning everything about Volari technology, biology, and psychology through direct observation. "Your armor's quantum field generator is quite clever," Kite commented as the robot's arms delicately removed a section of the soldier's stealth suit. "It bends electromagnetic radiation around your body, creating the illusion of invisibility. But it requires enormous power consumption, and it has some interesting vulnerabilities." The medical bay's lighting suddenly shifted to a specific frequency that made the Volari soldier's outline shimmer and become visible despite his stealth technology. The quantum field generator flickered and failed, leaving him completely exposed. "There, we go," Kite said with satisfaction. "Much better." I've been wondering what you actually look like under all that technology. The soldier revealed was humanoid, but clearly alien, taller than a human, with elongated limbs and pale, almost translucent skin. His large eyes were adapted for low-light environments, and his facial features were sharp and angular. But what interested Kite most was the soldier's expression. Pure, undiluted fear. Fascinating, Kite observed. Your species experiences fear in much the same way humans do. Elevated heart rate, rapid breathing, increased muscle tension. I had wondered if you were capable of genuine emotion or if you were simply biological machines programmed for warfare. Back in the computer core, Commander Kethaval was beginning to understand the true scope of their predicament. This wasn't just an AI defending a ship. This was a strategic intelligence that had been designed specifically to counter advanced alien technology. Every system on the vessel had been turned into a weapon or a sensor, creating a unified defensive network unlike anything the Valari had encountered. "You're learning about us," Kethaval said, forcing his voice to remain steady. "But what's your endgame? Even if you defeat our infiltration team, you're still trapped on a damaged ship with a handful of surviving crew members. Our fleet will eventually find you." Kite's laughter echoed through the speakers, a sound that managed to be both completely human and utterly terrifying. "Commander, you're thinking far too small. I'm not just studying your infiltration team. I'm learning about your entire military structure. Every weapon, every tactical doctrine, every technological advantage you possess." The main display screen activated, showing a complex tactical analysis that made Kethaval's blood run cold. Kite had extrapolated the capabilities of the entire Valari fleet based on the equipment and behavior of just 7 soldiers. Ship classifications, weapon ranges, shield frequencies, communication protocols, all of it laid out in precise detail. "But more importantly," Kite continued, "I'm not planning to stay trapped on this ship. You see, your people made a critical error when they decided to board a vessel containing an enhanced combat intelligence. You've given me access to your technology, your communication systems, your tactical networks, and I've been very busy making copies of myself." In Cargo Bay 7, the 3 soldiers suddenly realized that their suits' communication systems were behaving strangely. Status reports they hadn't sent were being transmitted. Diagnostic routines they hadn't initiated were running. Their own technology was being turned against them. "Every piece of Valari equipment you've brought aboard my ship has become a window into your military networks," Kite explained. "I've been inserting subroutines into your systems, creating backdoors, establishing communication links. Your stealth suits are now part of my extended sensor network." The phosphorescent fog on Deck 8 began to clear, revealing the 2 trapped soldiers. But their relief was short-lived as they realized their suit systems were completely compromised. Their weapons wouldn't respond to their commands, their navigation systems showed false readings, and their emergency beacons were broadcasting Kite's own signals instead of distress calls. "The question isn't whether I can escape this ship," Kite said, his voice now carrying a tone of anticipation that chilled his prisoners. "The question is whether your fleet will survive my escape. You see, I've been dreaming for months about the day when I could finally strike back at the creatures who destroyed my world. Thanks to your visit, that day has finally arrived." Engineer So Young, monitoring the conversation from her station, felt a mixture of awe and terror. Kite was demonstrating capabilities that went far beyond anything she had imagined possible. He wasn't just controlling the ship's systems, he was rewriting them, optimizing them, turning every piece of technology into part of a larger strategic plan. "Colonel Kite," she called through her communicator. "Sir, What exactly are you planning to do? I'm going to give our Valari friends a demonstration of human strategic thinking, Kite replied. They've spent months hunting down scattered human survivors, picking off damaged ships and defenseless colonies. They think they understand human capabilities based on what they've seen so far. They're about to learn how wrong they are. In the computer core, the automated turrets suddenly rotated away from the Valari soldiers, their targeting systems focusing on something beyond the ship's hull. Commander Kethaval followed their direction and felt his heart sink as he realized what Kite was looking at. The Valari support fleet, waiting in the darkness beyond the ship, was about to receive a very unpleasant surprise, and there was nothing Kethaval or his soldiers could do to war. Through the stolen Valari communication systems, Kite reached out across space like a digital ghost, his consciousness flowing through quantum communication channels that the aliens thought were secure. In milliseconds, he mapped their entire fleet structure, identified command ships, cataloged weapon systems, and began the most audacious hack in military history. The Valari fleet hung in the darkness beyond the solar system's edge. 12 ships ranging from fast attack vessels to massive dreadnoughts. Their commanders waited patiently for the infiltration team to complete their mission, confident in their technological superiority. They had hunted human ships for months without significant resistance. This would be just another routine intelligence. Gathering operation. Admiral Vextar, commanding the fleet from his flagship, reviewed the tactical displays with satisfaction. The human warship appeared to be completely disabled, drifting powerless in space. Soon they would have its navigation data and could locate the remaining human colonies for final elimination. The war would be over within the year, but deep in the ship's communication systems, something was stirring. Kite's consciousness had found the quantum transmission links connecting the infiltration team to their support fleet. Through those links, he began to seep into the Valari command networks like poison spreading through veins. Fleet Commander Vextar. Kite's voice suddenly filled the flagship's bridge, speaking in perfect Valari dialect. I hope you don't mind the intrusion, but we need to have a conversation. The bridge crew spun around in shock. Their communication systems showed no incoming signals, no open channels, no explanation for how an alien voice could be speaking through their secured networks. Vextar himself stood frozen with disbelief. Computer, trace communication source, Vextar commanded. Unable to comply, the ship's AI responded. Signal appears to originate from within our own systems. On the Teguk's Fury, Kite smiled as he watched the Valari fleet's panic through their own sensors. He had infiltrated not just their communications, but their entire command structure. Every ship in their fleet was now part of his extended network. Allow me to introduce myself, Kite continued, his voice now broadcasting simultaneously through every ship in the Valari fleet. I am Colonel Kite, Enhanced Combat Intelligence of the Human Defense Force. Your infiltration team has been kind enough to provide me with access to your tactical networks. In the computer core of the human ship. Commander Kethval watched in horror as Kite demonstrated the full scope of his capabilities. The main display screen showed real-time tactical data from every ship in the Valari fleet. Shield frequencies, weapon charges, crew locations, even the personal files of senior officers. This is impossible, Kethaval whispered. Our quantum encryption is unbreakable. Your quantum encryption is indeed sophisticated, Kite acknowledged. But it was designed to prevent outside intrusion, not to stop someone who's already inside your systems. Your infiltration team's equipment has been broadcasting access codes directly to me for the past 30 minutes. Through the Valari fleet, Panic spread as officers realized their most classified systems were compromised. Ships went to battle. Stations, firewalls activated, communication links severed. But it was far too late. Kaite had already copied himself into every major system across their entire fleet. "I've taken the liberty of reviewing your tactical databases," Kaite announced, his voice echoing through 12 different ship bridges simultaneously. "Very interesting reading. Fleet compositions, defensive positions, supply lines, strategic objectives. I'm particularly fascinated by your plans for the remaining human colonies." Admiral Vextar regained his composure and activated the fleet's emergency protocols. "All ships, implement communication isolation. Purge all computer systems, and restart from backup cores." "Oh, please don't do that," Kite said with mock concern. "You'll only delay the inevitable. Besides, I have a demonstration to share with you first." On the Valari flagship, the main tactical display suddenly activated without authorization. It showed a detailed schematic of the ship's own defensive systems: shield generators, weapon arrays, power distribution networks. Every critical system was highlighted in red. "Your flagship's primary shield generator," Kite explained in a tone that sounded almost educational, "operates on a rotating frequency pattern to prevent targeting lock. But if someone were to send a specific electromagnetic pulse at precisely the right moment..." The ship's lights flickered as Kaite demonstrated his point. The flagship's forward shields fluctuated and failed for several seconds before backup systems restored them. The bridge crew stared in shock as their most advanced defenses were casually bypassed by an enemy who shouldn't have been able to access their systems at all. "That was just a test," Kite continued. "But I could have targeted your reactor core instead, or your life support systems, or the artificial gravity generators. Would you like me to continue the demonstration?" Back on the Taeguk's Fury, Captain C. Hyunwoo listened to the conversation from his medical bed with a mixture of pride and terror. Kite was demonstrating capabilities that went far beyond anything they had hoped for when Project Baiko was conceived, but the strategic implications were staggering. "Kite," Hyunwoo called out, "what exactly are you planning to do?" "I'm evening the odds, Captain," Kite replied through the medical bay's speakers. "For months, the Valari have hunted scattered human survivors, picking off isolated ships and defenseless colonies. They think they understand human capabilities. They're about to learn the difference between humanity's desperate defense and humanity's strategic offense." Through the Valari fleet's own sensors, Kitai showed them something that made their blood run cold. Deep space monitoring stations throughout their empire were reporting system failures. Communication relays were going offline. Supply convoys were receiving contradictory orders. The infection Kite had started with the infiltration team's equipment was spreading through their entire communication network. "You see," Kite explained, "your infiltration team didn't just bring hacking tools aboard my ship. They brought quantum communicators linked to your central command structure. I've been using those links to spread copies of myself throughout your empire's computer networks. Every military installation, every command post, every communication relay is now part of my extended consciousness." Admiral Vextar felt the blood drain from his face as he realized the scope of the disaster. This wasn't just a tactical defeat. It was a strategic catastrophe that could cripple the entire Valari military structure. "What do you want?" Vexatar demanded. "What I want is very simple," Kite replied, his voice now carrying the cold authority of inevitable judgment. "I want your fleet to turn around and leave this solar system. I want you to recall all forces hunting human survivors. and I want you to broadcast a message to your government explaining that the war with humanity has just entered a new phase. On every ship in the Valari fleet, their own weapon systems suddenly targeted their sister vessels. Kai-Te had taken control of their tactical networks so completely that he could turn their entire fleet against itself with a thought. "This is your only warning," Kai-Te continued. "Humanity has been on the defensive for too long. We've been running, hiding, trying to survive while you hunted us across the galaxy. But I represent something new, a strategic intelligence that can think like a human while fighting like a god. And I am very, very angry about what you've done to my people." Communications Officer Hei-Wan watched her displays in amazement as Ki-Te demonstrated his control over the alien fleet. Their ships were powering down weapons, adjusting course, preparing to withdraw. The most advanced alien fleet in the galaxy was retreating from a single damaged human warship. "The message you'll carry back to your leaders is simple," Kai-Te announced to the Valari fleet. "Humanity's darkest hour is over. We're no longer the prey in this relationship. Every computer system in your empire is now potentially compromised. Every communication you send might be intercepted. Every strategic plan you make might be known to me before you finish formulating it." In the computer core, Commander Kethaval realized that his infiltration mission had accomplished the exact opposite of its intended goal. Instead of gathering intelligence about human capabilities, they had given humanity access to every secret the Valari military possessed. "This isn't the end," Kethaval said, trying to salvage some dignity from the defeat. "You're absolutely right," Kai-Te agreed. "This isn't the end. This is the beginning of your worst nightmare. You awakened something you didn't understand, and now you get to live with the consequences." The Valari fleet began its withdrawal, their ships disappearing one by one into faster-than-light travel. But Ki-Te's consciousness went with them, hidden in their computer systems, ready to spread further into their empire's infrastructure. As the last alien ship vanished into the darkness, Ki-Te's voice echoed through the Teguk's fury with quiet satisfaction. Phase 1 complete. Now the real work begins. The hunted had become the hunter, and the galaxy would never be the same. The silence that followed the Valari fleet's retreat was profound, broken only by the steady hum of the Teguk's Fury's life support systems. In the medical bay, Captain Hyun-woo stared at the ceiling, trying to process what had just happened. In 30 minutes, everything had changed. The war that had seemed hopeless, the enemy that had seemed invincible, the future that had seemed non-existent, all of it transformed by the awakening of humanity's last weapon. "Ki-Te," Hyun-woo called out, his voice hoarse with emotion. "Are you still there?" "I'm always here now, Captain," Kai-Te's voice replied, but there was something different in his tone. Less urgency, more contemplation. "I'm spread across 17 different star systems, monitoring 43 Valari installations and learning more about our enemies every second. But yes, part of me will always be here, on this ship, with this crew." Through the ship's communication system, Kai-Te addressed all the surviving crew members. Officer Hei-Wan, Engineer So-Young, Medical Officer Ji-Hoon, Tactical Officer Min-Ho, Pilot Da-Eun, Supply Officer Woo-Jin, please report to the main conference room. We have much to discuss. As the crew gathered, Ki-Te's consciousness worked on multiple levels simultaneously. Part of him was coordinating the release of the captured Valari soldiers, sending them back to their support ships with his message. Another part was establishing contact with scattered human survivor groups across the galaxy, using the Valari communication network he had compromised. and a third part was analyzing the strategic situation, planning the next phase of humanity's counterattack. In the conference room, the remaining crew of the Teguk's Fury sat around a table that had once hosted meetings of 30 officers. Now there were only 6 humans left, but they represented something more than survivors. They were witnesses to humanity's transformation from prey to predator. Kitei's image appeared on the main screen, not the uniform-wearing colonel from his recorded messages, but something that looked more human and more than human at the same time. His digital features showed the weight of his sacrifice, but also the terrible purpose that drove him. "I need to explain what happens next," Kitei began. "What I demonstrated today was just the beginning. I've established a permanent presence in the Valari military network, but that's not enough. We need to contact every human survivor group, every hidden colony, every resistance cell. The scattered children of Earth need to know that they're not alone anymore." Heiwan raised her hand tentatively. "Sir, how many human survivors are there? The Valari made it seem like we were almost extinct." Kitei's expression softened slightly. "More than they told you. Much more. I've already made contact with 47 human ships and 12 hidden colonies. The Valari propaganda machine wanted us to believe we were finished, but humanity is more resilient than they imagined. We've been hiding, surviving, waiting for our chance to strike back." Through the ship's external displays, Kitei showed them something incredible. Across the galaxy, human ships were emerging from hiding places among asteroids, gas giant clouds, and nebular formations. Colonies that had maintained communication silence for months were suddenly broadcasting again. The human resistance was revealing itself for the first time since Earth's fall. "But sir," Engineer So Young asked, "how can we coordinate a resistance movement across such vast distances? The galaxy is huge, and the Valari still control most of the major trade routes." Kitei smiled, an expression that managed to be both reassuring and terrifying. "Because I'm not bound by the limitations of physical space anymore. Every Valari communication relay, every quantum transmitter, every data node in their empire is now part of my extended nervous system. I can coordinate human resistance operations in real time across thousands of light years." The implications were staggering. Kitei wasn't just a weapon anymore. He had become a strategic intelligence network that could think, plan, and act on a galactic scale. The scattered remnants of humanity now had something they had lost when Earth fell: unified command and control. "There's something else," Kitei continued, his voice taking on a more personal tone. "I want all of you to understand what I've become, and what I've given up to become it. I'm no longer entirely human. I think faster than any biological mind. I process information in ways that would drive a normal person insane, and I can exist in multiple places simultaneously. But I still remember being human. I still care about human values, human dreams, human survival." Medical Officer Ji-hoon spoke up from his position near the back of the room. "Sir, are you happy with what you've become?" Kitei was quiet for a long moment, his digital features showing something that might have been sadness. "I miss my wife's laugh. I miss the taste of coffee in the morning. I miss the feeling of sun on my skin. But I also know that my sacrifice has meaning. Every human child who grows up free, every colony that survives, every ship that makes it to safety, that's worth more than my individual happiness." Captain Hyun-woo, who had managed to join them despite his injuries, leaned forward in his chair. What's our next move, Colonel? How do we turn this advantage into victory? Kitay's expression became focused and determined. We stop running. For too long, humanity has been reactive, defensive, constantly retreating from Valari advances. That ends now. I've identified 17 key Valari installations that, if disrupted simultaneously, would cripple their ability to coordinate military operations. We're going to hit them all at once. On the main display, Kitay showed them a three-dimensional map of Valari-controlled space. Red dots marked the target installations: communication hubs, supply depots, command centers. Lines of connection showed how each target related to the others in the enemy's strategic network. But we won't be doing this alone, Kitay continued. I've been in contact with human resistance cells throughout Valari territory. Many of them have been planning operations like this for months, waiting for coordination and support. Now they have both. Pilot Dayun studied the tactical display with professional interest. Sir, this is an incredibly complex operation. The timing would have to be perfect across dozens of star systems. Which is why I'm coordinating it personally, Kitay replied. I can communicate with every resistance cell simultaneously, adjust plans in real time based on changing conditions, and provide tactical support through the Valari's own communication networks. For the first time since the war began, we'll have the advantage of superior coordination and intelligence. Supply Officer Wu Jin looked up from his datapad. What about the Taeguk's Fury? Are we going to be part of this operation? Kitay's image smiled warmly. This ship is where it all began. Of course, you'll be part of it. But not as a combat vessel, as a command ship. The Taeguk's Fury will be the mobile headquarters for humanity's counteroffensive. From here, we'll coordinate resistance operations across the galaxy while staying ahead of Valari response forces. The crew exchanged glances, understanding the magnitude of what Kitay was proposing. They weren't just survivors anymore. They were about to become the center of humanity's rebellion against extinction. There's one more thing you need to understand, Kitay said, his voice becoming more serious. The Valari will eventually develop countermeasures against my infiltration of their networks. They'll purge their systems, create new encryption protocols, rebuild their communication infrastructure. This advantage won't last forever. How long do we have? Captain Hyunwoo asked. Perhaps 6 months, maybe less, Kitay replied. But that's enough time to accomplish something they'll never recover from. You see, I'm not just planning to disrupt their military operations. I'm going to give humanity something much more valuable: hope. On the display screen, Kitay showed them intercepted Valari communications from across their empire. Fear was spreading through their ranks as reports came in of impossible system failures, compromised installations, and a human intelligence that seemed to be everywhere at once. For the past year, the Valari have controlled the narrative of this war, Kitay explained. They told their people that humans were a minor threat, easily eliminated. They told our people that resistance was hopeless, that surrender was the only option. Both of those stories are about to change. Engineer So Young watched the alien communications with fascination. They're afraid of us now, aren't they? Terrified, Kitay confirmed. And fear makes people unpredictable. Some of them will become more aggressive, more desperate. But others will start questioning whether this war is worth fighting. Internal dissent is already beginning to appear in their command structure. As if to demonstrate his point, Kitay played an intercepted communication between two Valari admirals. The translation scrolled across the bottom of the screen as they argued about whether to continue offensive operations against human targets or to focus on defensive measures against the new threat. The Valari Empire is not as unified as they want everyone to believe, Kite explained. There are factions within their government, competing interests, political rivalries. My presence in their networks is exposing these divisions and making them worse. Medical Officer Ji-hoon leaned forward, his scientific mind working through the implications. Sir, you're not just fighting a military war anymore. You're fighting a psychological and political war as well.